My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasankaran, Guru Piranyo, fellow Jnanis. Today I'm going to speak about Mahan's 12th principle, effort, which is part 3. In part 1 and 2, I covered why effort is really important from the perspective of Mahan. And here, Mahan speaks about how effort is crucial, particularly if we want to achieve something in life, and if we want to be very successful, we need to put in a lot of effort. As a species, as I mentioned in my previous satsang, that effort is very important for survival. As a species, for us to survive, we need to put in effort to ensure that, we can continue our survival, not just in current life, but also the future generation. Effort is also very important to meet our needs, our daily needs, to be comfortable in our life, to ensure sustainability, existence of our species, both, from increasing our lifespan to having a comfortable life, having the various material needs to sustain ourselves, our family, and the future generation, and also having that emotional, balance to ensure that we have that capacity and capability to manage all situations, crisis, and difficult moments in our lives. And more importantly, also having that intellectual capability to be innovative and creative, to find new solutions to address some of the grand challenges that, that is presented to us. So we see that, effort is very important in this context of sustainability. But moving on to a higher level of once we achieve all our material needs, to move towards a more peaceful and an enlightened life. Even that requires effort in terms of more deeper intensity of introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation. And through these practices, we see that, through effort, we discover what we call our spiritual compass. And I spoke about the spiritual compass. The spiritual compass is the ability for us to understand some of the various religious scriptures that talks about, the concept of God, the concept of the universe, and the concept of self. Through religious practices, we, attain this bhakti and the discipline to retrieve from our daily material things and, the challenges of our lives, to have the discipline on self-development, self-exploration. So we see that, bhakti, the search for God, helps us to start focusing inward as opposed to, more external. So this is the perspective of religious pursuit. The second aspect is actually the pursuit of the self, an experiential, concept of experiencing something that is beyond our own material biology. So again, we see that there's two aspects of one, discipline through bhakti. The other one is more experiential, the self-realization part. Both leads to that convergence at some point. What we see here is that both the bhakti, the discipline, and that experiential learning, if we intensify that, it leads us to a more evidence-based approach to discovering the truth. A kind of a scientific lens, like what scientists do, that you start sifting out what is unreal in pursuit of what is real. And we see that, as we become more focused, more disciplined, and attain that quietude of the mind, we attain this ability to be creative, to be able to reason things out, to be able to see things in a more logical way. And we see that it reinforces one another. So the bhakti discipline, the experiential learning through self-realization, strengthens, deepens, and harnesses our scientific pursuit, our scientific way of looking at things, and in a very logical way. And this helps us to identify and discover our own spiritual compass that guides us through the various, aspects of life. And as I mentioned in the previous satsang, we see that, life has all kinds of challenges and all kinds of things that we experience. And I mentioned about how um, the idea of, sometimes we have hate and how to manage hate, transform hate into love and unconditional love. We also see that, sometimes we want to do things, but we are lazy, and there's this laziness creeps in, and that prevents us from achieving our full potential. And I spoke about how we transition those phases of hate and laziness. Today, I'm going to speak about jealousy. These are all qualities that makes the mind shrunken, and we see that less illumined makes us less illumined, and it's kind of like a drag on us. And you see that sometimes we feel jealous when someone else gets something that we want, but we don't get it. And we feel that, why didn't we get it? And that kind of preoccupies us. And it distracts us from the journey of that excellence to achieve that outcomes. So we see that, jealousy, really can be quite troubling and quite tormenting for many people. So again, jealousy is a sign that we are insecure. We have not understood our own full potential. It is also a sign of weakness and also a sign of obsession. And these all makes the mind shrunken. And how does, the spiritual compass helps us to transition this jealousy phase? Because if we don't overcome this, it is hard for us to progress spiritually. And this is what jealousy does. And this is what the spiritual compass does. It starts probing, why do we feel jealous? Is it because of me or because of that person that has achieved the outcomes, the par excellence outcome? And as we start exploring and looking inside deeply, and that's what introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation does, that spiritual compass actually focuses on us and not on the external party or the external things. And you see that slowly as the mind becomes more calmer and cooler, and a sense of clarity comes in. And you see that the jealousy, which is so big and subsumed us, slowly starts shrinking. See, the shrunken mind starts expanding, and the jealousy, which is huge, that is making the mind shrunken, starts getting smaller and smaller. As the mind expands, the jealousy becomes smaller and smaller until eventually it disappears. A sense of confidence comes in. The insecurity and inferiority complex slowly starts disappearing. And we start seeing, wow, a sense of burst of enthusiasm and a burst of confidence, a burst of, belief in oneself, amazing, exhilarating feeling of, self-confident, new identity starts emerging, and we start believing in ourselves. And more importantly, the jealous mind now becomes liberated. It starts learning from the person that has achieved par excellence. And slowly, slowly, through the process of spiritual osmosis, the mind that is shrunken starts expanding, the jealousy starts disappearing, and the mind slowly gets inoculated against this jealousy. And ultimately, the mind becomes expanded, confident, ability to overcome all the challenges. And when the jealousy disappears, the mind becomes self-sufficient and inspirational, illumined. The confidence level goes up. What is impossible becomes I am possible. Everything, that is, even how challenging it is, you become strong in overcoming this. And this is the transition that the spiritual compass helps us achieve. The next one that cripples most people's mind is actually greed. This is something that, often happens when people feel that they don't have enough. They start hoarding things, whether it's hoarding food, hoarding money, hoarding all the material riches. If you look very carefully, as what Mahatma Gandhi says, there is enough resources in this world to meet the needs of human being, but there is not enough, resources to meet the greed of people. And you see, greed also, people are never satisfied. They're never satisfied with what they have, the position, the title, the jobs, the family, the riches, and they're so preoccupied they want more and more, and eventually they lose their bearing. And it becomes so intense of that search for material riches that they forget the self. So here again, we see that this is something that, makes the mind shrunken and does not enable the mind to expand, become liberated, and become self-realized and illumined. So as what, the quote by Eric mentions, that greed is a bottomless pit which exhausts the person in endless effort to satisfy the need without ever reaching satisfaction. So greed will never enable ones to be satisfied. So, and it's not a pleasant feeling, continuously, and sometimes in the process, we ruin our health, both physical, mental health, and also our relationships, so on. Ultimately, life can be very miserable. So, how can the spiritual compass help us to overcome this challenge? And we see that again through the self-exploration, through discipline, bhakti, the experiential learning, using scientific approaches. Why do I need so much? The human body only needs so much. I can only live in one home at a time. I can only do things one thing at a time. I don't need a lot of richness. I just need, a lot of, I need adequate resources to be able to be satisfied, to, and satisfy my material needs, my intellectual needs, and also be able to support the various experiences that I want to enjoy. But when we keep this material thing so close to us, we ultimately miss our own identity. We associate ourselves so much with the material riches that we miss that spiritual, enlightened identity within us. So we see that this intensive introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation helps us to decipher why we have these thoughts. And slowly, through this process, as the mind expands, the notion and the thoughts of greed starts getting smaller and smaller. Ultimately, when the mind becomes expansive, like space itself or like the universe itself, the thought of greed becomes so minute and small. Ultimately, it's insignificant and disappears. And slowly, in that expansion, the mind, imbibes the values of altruism, the values of giving, the values of, being self-sufficient, even how little the the material things that are there. So we see that slowly the transition takes place. Our focus on materialism starts changing. Not that materialism is not important. It is important to a particular point to ensure that we meet our material needs, but not to be overly caught up by it. And you see that over time, we transition that phase to, becoming more and more humanistic, more humanitarian. There's a lot more, even whatever richness I have, I start sharing with others, sharing with people, contributing to the development of others. And slowly you see that our life starts, from being very selfish and self-centered to becoming more and more expanded, more and more universal. Ultimately, we see that, we start becoming more, expansive in our mindset. And this is the part that we say is that the shrunken mind, eventually starts expanding to becoming universal. And ultimately, you see that you step into God's shoes to be able to do the things that what the divinity would do. And there's a nice saying that it says that, that is by Guru Sangaran. He used to say that when you step into God's shoes to do and help others, God steps into your shoes to guide you and navigate through what we call life and enable you to attain a very enlightened and inspirational life. So you see that the spiritual compass enables the mind to be inspired, inoculate itself from all the things that makes it shrunken, and helps it expand and become more and more inspirational and universal. So we see this happening for, among people who are intensive, including yourselves too. You see that as you practice meditation, there's a change, that the DNA of the mind starts changing. The chemistry of the mind starts changing. Ultimately, you see that you're not perturbed by anger, greed, hatred, jealousy, all the things that makes the mind shrunken. So this is the teachings of Mahan. And as you put to practice, you see that you become more and more enlightened. Things don't impact you. You always say, it's okay, I can manage this. So this is the essence of the I God philosophy. It's about self development, self exploration, self discovery of the inner resource in all of us. As the mind becomes more and more attuned to it, the mind becomes more and more stronger, more resilient, more inspirational, and ultimately it becomes more enlightened. This is the message of Mahan. Sandosha.